everybody, Heroes Path here, and I'm here with a first ever SAI tutorial. Now, I know most people haven't seen me use SAI. I only posted, I believe, 2 speed paints at the moment. I did have a plan for a huge speed paint, which is still taking me a while because I have to get it within the time I do. Anyways, this was out for a special request, so why not? So we're gonna dive right into it. Well, dive as in open up me a page. So first, what I usually do after opening up my program, mine is a little bit simpler. As you can see, there's not a lot of brushes. That's fine because mine is Paint Tool SAI, the easy version. I don't think they give it still nowadays. If they do, hallelujah. If not, using the regular version is still fine. You're just gonna end up with more brushes. So we go to new. Everything's set in pixels. You can call it whatever you like. I usually leave it blank until I save it. Literally. So resolution's gonna stay 72. Width is however big, same with the height. I usually preset mine to the width of 1000 and height of 800. So we keep it pixel, please. We're gonna plop that in there. Now, before we even start with the drawing, we're gonna dive into some properties of SAI that I'm sure most people have different selections for. Let's start with our main tool friend here, the square selection tool. The square selection, I have mine, I believe, is stuck on the preset with, select layer and the drag pixels of about 18 pixels. If yours is different, you can go ahead and change it to this. It's not going to matter that much, but it helps to grab almost all of your pictures of the drawing. Same goes for the lasso. Just make sure that it's on the anti setting. Please do not put it off of that. It will not be a fun ride for you. This one, a lot of people don't really check, and I recommend this being one of the main things you always check. Your magic wand is what helps you to select inside of layers, or in this case, to select inside of lines. So make sure the color difference is really low, not low to the point of like 18 and whatnot. Put it at least 41. That is as low as I want you to go with that. Any lower and it will freak out. Target, working layer, and that anti-aliasing, please put that on there. This is fairly simple, again, 18 pixels. Oh, I gotta see. Zoom out, zoom in, there's really no difference. However, I don't really use this, I just use my good old friends up here. I don't care about that. It can be whatever you want, but I don't screw with it, so. Same goes for these tools here. The only one I really focus on is getting a color picker, if in any I need it. Now on to the more important things. All of these beautiful brushes. I don't use textures. Let's be very clear, I keep it on a simple circle. Same with here. Density, always 100%. Now, these are the ones you can mess with. I normally keep my settings to normal, and the third square icon here, which says edge shape. Anything else will give you a sharper edge shape. I will go with this one here. Then we go into the airbrush. The airbrush, if you do use it, I sometimes use this for shading bases, is also set to a normal, but it has a more refined edge shape. Its minimum size is usually about 50%, and its density is 50, and still a simple circle. Now, the brush is a more funnier way of trying to do this. So, in the case of brush, it depends on what you want to use it for. We'll go into the smaller ones and why it's set on here, but I want to keep on task with the main points. So, normal setting. Hardest define you can get, mostly because with my brushes that I have, they have a refined edge, and I'll show you in a second. Size is going to keep pertaining to here, however, min size is 50%. Density is a little bit rougher than your airbrush, so I would say about 68 or more is better, but I would say 68 should be your bare minimum. Now, textures here should at least be 50%. You don't want too much of them, and again, I'll dive into that. Blending, 47. beautiful kind of blend. Dilution gives you a beautiful kind of blend to that too, and the same with persistence. So you have 47 blending, dilution 39, persistence is 70. Keep opacity, please, for the love of God, do not uncheck this. Now, as I was saying, why mine is like this is because I usually go to around here, and if you want to make a grass effect, if I can grab my pen real quick, you're gonna barely see it, but you can see how it makes sharp lines. Now, if you're doing someone for backgrounds, usually, this helps to make a beautiful grass texture, and you can usually layer upon this, and it will actually bold out as grass. So we're gonna leave that as it is. Watercolor, believe it or not, I don't touch this unless this is for a cloud, because for clouds you can just make bubble circles, and these are usually really good to blend with, the same with trying to use a brush on top of it. So its minimum size is 63, density is way up there. Simple circle yet again, except now the blending is 77, dilution is 42, and persistence is 80, and you don't really need to keep the opacity. Make sure it's smoothing by at least 50%. Now if I can lower this real quick. These make for some really good clouds. You just gotta make sure you layer. I would color him in, but we're not here for that right now. Now everything up here before I keep going should stay at a minimum. Now depending on how well you want lines, I suggest you put this at a beautiful S-7 because your stabilizer will end up something like this. Look at that beautiful line. Whereas if I show you my actual hand, let's put it at 0, is this. I think I prefer the one on the left. Anyways, S1 is usually really good for sketching, and I'll show you which pen I use for sketching, but we'll keep going for now. Okay, marker. Oh, I almost forgot. This edge needs to be almost the same as, where are you? As your pen brush. Nearly forgot. It's the same as your pen brush, or pen tool, excuse me. This is the same as your airbrush, and the same with your brush. They're always going to be very light marks. So your minimum size is 50%, its density is way up there, circle still remains, your blending is only 50, and your persistence is 80. Again, I don't really use most of these tools. These two are the ones that come to mind. Eraser is just an eraser, just keep it as sharp as you can. You don't really need any kind of size, but the density needs to be way up there so you can actually get rid of everything. Select, deselect, there's not much needed to be said except that your edge should be sharp enough so when you select, there's no like remaining pixels. Like I could do this and it's gonna keep that shape. It's not gonna fuzz out everywhere like with the other ones. Then with deselect, bucket is bucket. Just make sure that your transparency is strict and that it's on the working layer. Please do not do anything else but that working layer. Binary, another one I do not use. However, when I do use it, it's pixel art. Pixel art, I will keep it on an opacity all the way up, so that would be 255. Advanced settings, you just want to make sure it's accurate, normal, and 100%. Do not change this, or if you try doing pixel art, it's gonna go everywhere. And we get to the sketching tool. Sketching tool I usually use, and I say usually, is I have the density up to 100%. Still simple circle, but I want this quality to be at its fastest. 0% of its hardness. These you don't gotta worry, but at least a 10% softness to it. Same with size. The reason for this, and again it's like your pen tool. The reason for this is because if I go to S1 and I wanted to, because we're gonna do sketching in a bit, but it gives you like that esque, like you actually are sketching, and I'll show you in a bit, but this here is beautiful speed and everything for an actual sketch without losing your sharp lines. Now, believe it or not, the rest of the tools you see on here, I do not use the rest of these except for 2 more, and I will show you what those 2 more are. Those 2 more are called crayon for the first one. As you can see, it's been prepped from the last drawing. Minimum size of at least 70%. Density is only 31. Paper, and I'll explain why I have it to a simple circle paper. Blending should be at least 30, dilution to at least 70, and persistence at least 63 should be good. You don't need the opacity, but the reason why this is like this is because I use this for a texture. Say you're doing a wall, and you really want that wall to pop. Well, if we do a nice crayon texture here with some crayon, you can see it has that grainy texture to it. So whenever I do a wall, this is usually something I'll start layering on top of it, whether it be by multiple or by black. It's usually preferred by multiple, but if say it's a light color and you really can't see your multiple, do a darker layer of it and then do a little bit of black on top of it to give it that sense of like old and decay. And lastly, the only other tool I use, blur, which if you're taking lessons with me, we're gonna be using blur a whole bunch. So blur, it's got a min size of 60%, the density of 100%, spread 50. Reason I use spread, it really shows when you're trying to buff things out and blur it out. Blending, give it 100%. I don't want to see anything lower than that, because it's not going to blur the way you want it to smooth. Dilution, 39, I keep it there. Persistence, 80%, and smoothness, that better be 100%. Now then, since we got the base out of the way, I'm going to give you guys like a few minutes here, and then we'll pick up right back out of it. So in that meantime, I'm going to go ahead and set up to see what we're going to be drawing. You could even pause if you want to. I believe we can just start with something simple now. Again, you don't have to be drawing what I'm drawing. This here is our first lesson. If it's a lesson determining on a character, then we'll work on characters. But for right now, I want to do a really basic session with you all. So within this small basic session, I think we can go about drawing our own characters. And I'm sure everybody has their own character. Me personally, I've been drawing Sonic for years, so mine is based around that genre. However, it's not supposed to look anything like him. If you have references of them, that usually helps, but for me personally, I'm going to go based on what I remember from memory. Alright, so what we're going to first want to do is enter into a sketch. We're gonna, like I said, do very basic. If you want to see more advanced skills, I'll make another video. So, for sketching, some people usually follow a color code. I sometimes do, but I stay within that color. Like, when I mean color code, they start using all the colors of the rainbow. It's like red is for head, purple is for body, and so on. I'll usually stick to one color, so I think for today, we will start with a almost even green. You don't have to do the same color I'm doing either, just whatever feels comfortable to you. So, take my trusty ink pen here, make sure I'm at stabilizer S-1, and circle to the best of my ability. It's not going to be a perfect circle, because we're not aiming for perfect right now. We're aiming for decent. You can tell what shape it is. And the way I usually have her positioned, I'll have her looking up to the sky. So within this, I have my basic shape. That part's done. You can put it at 50%, you can put it lower. I keep it at 50 because it's a darker shade. Do a little bit lighter, and now we're gonna do some minor details. Again, you don't have to do what I'm doing. If you want to just do more basic shapes, you can, but I usually start sketching out, okay, well, this is where the muzzle goes. This is where the eyes go. Same to the other side. I want to make sure I know where my eyebrows are going. Now, from her position, I guess there's a little bit more that you can be seen, but when it comes to these characters, you don't see a lot. Let's see what else we can see. The ear. This very crummy ear. Now they have a circle-ish shape, so if I have to, I'll bump it over so I know, hey, this is where my circle is. So from here, I guess that means her head goes this way. I will use the younger versions, that way I can show you the shading a little bit easier, but come like more advanced lessons, like I said, if need be, you will see her in the more current form I have her. Her hair comes out right about there. Alright, so I have the basic shapes that I need here as well. And lastly, any minor details are usually going to be either in a lighter or darker. Sometimes I usually do darker, because it helps me to say, okay, well this is where the eyes go. And the nose. Her mouth. And her eyelash. Alright, so now that we have our basic shape, we're gonna go ahead and outline this. So you don't have to do this again. I usually, since I've drawn them for years, I'll merge everything down. If you need to, say like you're a slower learner, you can always take each individual and go by it. So circle, we no longer need. But this part here, you can always take the pen and follow along with me. I'm gonna still do, I'm still going to do this whole part before I do any of the actual details. But I'm gonna merge everything together so I know where everything is. Oh, I don't really need much of the head. And now we go to S7. Now, depending on how well you want to do this, it's up to you. Me personally, I like doing my details in a really small font. So I'll go ahead and lighten up this one. And this would be like a smaller font. Now, if I use 4, I need to use something almost as big. Either an 8 or a 7. I think in this case scenario, a 7 would be best. So we're going to start out slowly. Whatever it is of your character. Just start out slowly with the smaller pieces. Again, you don't have to be perfect at this. I usually do this a few times just to make sure I have the muzzle space correctly. But that's just me. If you're satisfied with what you have, you are done with that area and you can keep going. Now for her hair is usually in the way of her eye, so you're not going to see this part of the eye, but I know it's space now. Oops. You gotta love trying to draw these guys sometimes. It's very easy to remember and to forget where things are supposed to go. Because most of them don't look mad, but you look at their anatomy for a while and it's like, huh, wonder what expression they're having today. Now I did make her ears a little bit bigger, but that's to compensate for the fact that her head's going to kind of be everywhere. And I fixed up her spine. Alright, so now we have the basic detail. Oh boy, we're missing smaller details. So once you have this part done, do the smaller details as well. Add whatever is needed or take away whatever was needed to be taken away. See, I made her nose a bit bigger. I'll have her eye over here to kind of show how I do eyes a little bit easier than her body being a bit squished. And yes, I know this looks funny from this position. The way these characters are drawn can seem a little bit obtuse and strongly wrong, but that is how their anatomy goes, and I unfortunately cannot change that because I am not the person who made Sega. Now, for her eyelashes, as I can see from here, excuse me, I am also changing music to further enjoy myself. Oh, here it is. I had to find me Luigi's Mansion. Okay, but her eyelashes here, if you have a character with bold eyelashes, I don't really recommend like bolding it at first because you'll lose its dimension of shape. So I usually come in afterwards with the outline. Just make sure I get whatever I see in the white space. And once I do that, voila! Bold tip. I can get rid of this nose here to give the illusion of three-dimensional space. Alright, so we have this. We no longer need our sketch unless you believe you messed up and have to go back. That's alright. You move at your own pace. You can also pause the video. Now, I do need her reference, so we are going to go for a small joyride for the reference. Thank God I usually have her nearby. There she is. And this is, as I said, her newer form. But her hair is a very, very light blue. So, if you set up your wand tool correctly, it should do something like this. Now yes, I do know that there are some minor few white spots. I'm going to show you two ways you can do this shading. You can do the traditional, which is what I'm doing right now with you, which is the way I prefer. The way that some people might see it easier so you don't have to worry about those kind of spots is doing this. Get everything but your selection. Go to selection up here, hit invert. You will have selected the whole background. Now we go into, I would say, about a gray. Take as big of a brush as you can get, smack it on the back of this character, and go back in and get whatever imperfections you see. So once again, we'll take this, take an eraser, go as many times as needed, depending on how big the drawing is. Alright, and it looks like we got most of the imperfections. If I do this, we can see there are still extra gray marks around her back spine here, as well as under here, which is kind of annoying. But that's most for the imperfections. If this was a bigger one, there would be tons, but I'm not worried about that now. So with this in mind, all you would have to do is keep adding layers, grouping them together, and kind of just coloring on top of it. This is a different technique that I don't really use as much, but if you feel like using it, go ahead. This just makes it harder for the shading, which I'm going to show you. So when it comes to my way of doing it, it doesn't have that many layers as opposed to the other one. So we're gonna go back and take this again and just slowly get our base colors. So here's her hair. Go back to my reference sheet, go ahead and grab her eyes. Her eyes are here and here, so go ahead and layer that up as well. Don't worry about her back eyes if you're doing this type of character. We'll get to those in a second. Her skin-toned ears here and here. Alright, we got her skin, and now lastly for the nose. The nose isn't going to be in here because it's usually a generic rule of thumb black. I usually take her shoes and I'll move it here. If you just want to move it there, you can. But it just helps me to remember what color I use for the nose. Alright, so we no longer need our reference sheet. We're just going to go in and briefly deal with this situation. So, going back to the blue, you can see all of the whites. If you can't see white, I recommend putting in a background. It doesn't have to be a pretty background, just put in any color that will be different from the one that you slapped on down, and you should be able to find the imperfections. If not, keep that BG there and just lower the opacity a little bit, and it will show exactly what you need. So this does take a little bit of time depending on how big the drawing, which is why I said I was going to do something small, so it doesn't consume much of your time, and it makes it a little bit easier to follow along rather than making a huge drawing. We'll, again, do that in later lessons, if need be. I don't expect everyone to be saying that they do need lessons, because most of them can catch on pretty quick. And if those are those that need like hands-on and they have to go slow, by all means, go ahead and tell me. I will keep doing more the more people are in need of them. Alright, so it's starting to look a lot cleaner, as you can see. Just slowly passing this around makes the line art pop out just a tad bit more. With my dog. So from here now, this first layer is done. And you want to do this for any other imperfections that we found while trying to do this drawing here. My dog is losing it. Bark. I feel like this is any other of my tutorials. I hope I'm not breaking anyone's train of conscience. I just now remembered when I first made my South Park tutorials, my dog was barking. It's an omen for the boost. Alrighty, and that is the last of the shading for my character. If you still have more, again, go ahead and feel free to pause the video. So, we're going to start with the minor shading. Minor shading is usually something like this. It doesn't require a lot, but it still needs to be shaded. So here's what I do. I will click my new layer, hit multiple, and keep it usually on the same color. It doesn't have to be changed unless it's a different type of color. So for instance, yellow and or gold needs to be changed to either a deeper tone or at least an orange. Because for some reason, it does not show up. Alright, so you want to kind of match as big as character. I want to say 7. Yep, that looks good. And this is, I did 2 light passes. That is what I call a dirty shading. There is a lesson for that too, because I don't really use a lot of dirty shading. Dirty shading is if you want to give like a really, I guess, charcoal and or graphite kind of look to it. If you want a more clean shading, then the one that I usually use nowadays is a smooth shading, which is where I'll go over it a couple times. For the nose, you can't really see much of it, and it only really needs 1 shade and 1 little light at the top that you can also clip together. Nose is done. We just finished that in less than a few seconds. This is where things get a little bit more complicated. So for skin color, depends. Sometimes you can do just a deeper tone when it comes to Sonic characters, like so. And it's okay. I'm usually fine with using those. Or you can do human skin, which looks like that. Either one's fine. It just make sure that your shading is correct depending on the one you use. I will use its regular base color here with a little bit of a darker tone. So all you want to do when it comes to drawing Sonic characters, or if you do have skin, you can do the same. Find where you want your light to be hitting from. When it comes to Sonic characters, most of their light comes from this kind of angle here. Not where, well, where I put my dark, but that's not where the dark goes. So that would mean my dark falls on this side of the mouth. However, their ears tell a different story. Their ears don't do this. One, because it's haunting. Their ears tend to do something like this with dark, and the light comes from this side up here. Awkward, yes, but it fits the series. Now, if you're doing a normal human, I recommend staying with that same kind of lighting. So if you have light here, go ahead and keep your darks onto this side. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and take my pen here. We're gonna slowly carve onto this side of the mouth. Don't need a lot of it, but just enough to emphasize that this mouth has a shadow. Same with this side of the nose, believe it or not. You want to get a little bit of this and a little bit under. No more, no less, or you will take away from that part of the nose. Same with coming through the ear and around. Now, you can do a big one, but I usually do big here and a very light one down there. Now, for smooth shading, this can be for dirty too, I'll usually do 2 or 3 layers. You don't want to make them too much, but you want to make sure that they're there. And it depends on the area. If it's something as minor detail as here, you don't really need it. But if you do put it, smallest amount in that area. For the muzzle, it obviously needs a little bit more. So merge those 2 layers together, and we're going to grab our beautiful trusty blur tool. And trust me when I say you're going to end up falling in love with this blur tool that I have for the settings, because it does something like this. And that was a smooth shading, because it now blends perfectly that you can barely tell that you did anything in here. Same with coming into minor detail like here. If you blend it just right, it looks like you did absolutely nothing in there. Dirty shading, someone can tell that there was 2 or more colors used, and it ruins the illusion, but it's good for certain things. Alright, so we now have the muzzle in the first ever smooth shading. Now you can mess with this a bit if, say like, oh, it's too dark for me. By all means, change it. It's something that you're gonna love. Now, for me, it was a little bit dark, but from lightening it, it looks perfect now. So now you can smack that down. And we're gonna do the same to the light. Light, however, usually on skin does not take many layers. It only takes 1 normal color plus screen to make the amount you need. So don't add a lot of it, but enough to where you know where your light source is coming from. So this here for me is enough, and I only need 1. So get as big of a brush as you can and smooth it out. Again, it's gonna look like nothing's there. That's the whole point. But now I can tell, hey, that ear up there is a little bit lighter up in the corner. Great. The illusion I want to give. Same with this area. Now, unfortunately, I can see all this white. And it's gonna show no matter how many times I try to smooth it out, because it's a white. So what you want to do here again is light it up a little bit. It's not as much as your dark, but enough to where you can tell like, hey, this is a white area. So that should be good. Now I'm usually not done here because I like to emphasize what I just did. So we still have the same skin color, and I usually take my bucket. I don't even group this because all you gotta do is this. Oh no, what happened? Luminosity happened, and you want to just slowly lower it. For skin, I recommend just lowering it to about 2 or 3. You still have the luminosity effect to it. It's not as bright and it doesn't take away from your photo, but it does give your face a little bit of glow to it. So now we have the face and nose. We can go ahead and keep those together. I'll save the eyes for last because usually most people like seeing how I do eyes. So same thing with here. We're going to do the same tactic here, and when I finish up mine, hopefully you have yours finished up, and we'll move into the eyes. So do the same thing here. Put as many multiples as you desire. Put them in the cast shadows where you think you see them on your character when you have your set light. Set light could be to the top left, top right, bottom left to bottom right, middle. Wherever it pleases you and pleases your the people you're trying to entertain, basically, your audience, whoever that may be. It could just be yourself, it could be your parents, it could be your friends. Just something that you know you can make it almost three-dimensional. You're not going to get three-dimensional perfectly on the spot, but you can reach it. I'm going to go ahead and do mine, and we can go ahead and just do them together. So at the same time I'm coloring in mine, hopefully you are coloring in yours. Now, since I'm not speaking over this one, you'll probably see me move a little bit quicker. And that's because I know where I'm shading and putting my lights at. No, this isn't pre-drawn, this isn't pre-recorded. I'm drawing in real time as you guys are. Because I feel like it's a more gratifying teaching when you know your teacher's on the same page as you. I don't consider myself a teacher. I'm only a college student. But teacher is someone who's willing to help. Usually when it comes into any part of their field. My field is drawing, but I don't have a degree in it. However, I can teach things that most people have different ways to it. You can watch a YouTube tutorial, try out their style, and see it's something that doesn't suit you. It's okay. That's what for either other styles are for, or if you need help, just say, hey, you think you can show me how you do it, and I'll compare it to the others and see which is better. By all means. That's what we're here for. We're here to help. Or, well, I know I am. Alright, so I have this down, and the easier way to do this, like, you don't have to be perfect. You can be as sloppy as you want in the end. Because all I'm really gonna do is hit the clipping group, and that will prevent any of my mistakes here from looking like I splattered on the page. Alright, like so. And now that I have my multiple layer done, I'm gonna go ahead and shade it. Now, her head's a little bit harder, so I gotta be very careful of how I'm gonna shade this. In her case, this might look a little bit dirty, but for Sonic characters, they have that kind of dirty look to only this area. The rest of them can be pretty clean, but it's usually the spine, since it has to show that it's got more depth than the actual character. And if you see any white spots, go ahead and get the base color. That's why we never merge it yet, but we can go ahead and get the base color and fill in any of the gaps that you did see while you were shading. Same with the rest of these. You're gonna go ahead and shade in everything. Now the spine usually comes out a little bit funny, but that's okay. It gives me another highlight there if you can spot it. For those that don't see it, I can gladly explain it real quick. If you look at the spine closest to the line of the other one here, you can see where there's a small white gap. That white gap shows me that, hey, there's still another, part that's there. If I were to take away the line art and do this without lines, that would become more clear. Go ahead and do this part here. Come back around and shade this, so that's going to end up looking a little bit darker. It's okay. Same with up here and up here. See why I haven't changed my brush is because I want it to blend smooth. The only one that I do want to change my brush here is this part here, because this part has to come out almost this direction. And I don't want to hit the back end of it because I will blur that there. But it gives me pretty decent blur. And again, if it's too dark, like I can see it from up there, I'll lower this just a little bit. Go ahead and hit here. Now Scree is going to be easy for this character because this is all I have to do with her. Find the top of the spines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Do the same thing. Here, light 1, Okay, like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And I only need 2 of these. So now with the blur, we can do a little bit bigger. Because this is going to let me know where everything is. And you can see that nice shine if we leave it to almost a dirty look. It gives it that kind of hedgehog quality shine. But it actually gives the illusion, like I said, to three-dimensional space. Now you don't have to do dirty shading here. You can do clean, just make sure you do it enough that it can blend with the bottom. This is good for this kind of style. Usually for the rest of your guys' pictures, if you do characters that are almost humanistic, you won't really need dirty shading unless it's for a piece of clothing that's got too much shine to it, or depending on like your point of view of it, has that amount of shine that it calls for this. I don't really need to lower a lot of it, just a little bit. And now, go back to luminosity. You can go ahead and do it this way, but before I do that, I'm gonna do one more screen. I go to here, this is only for this style, you don't have to do this. For this style they have a little bit of a white line here, and here of the color itself. I'll usually go in with very small tender brush, lightly go over there, and this one, and this one. And it gives that, again, 3D illusion. I can also do this here, make it a little bit clearer that it exists, but in reality I don't really need to. Once I have that, go ahead and do this. Now we go back to luminosity. Go ahead and lower this just a little bit. Go ahead and add that. So now we have these parts and we can merge these. Again, don't worry about the eyes. We got one more component. And I say we're doing pretty good. Alright, so for the last part of this tutorial on shading, and how I usually go about things, is I don't do white eyes. What I do is I will take what's needed of it. So instead of just dark, or excuse me, very pale white eyes, go ahead and take my brush and put in this probably horrible, disgusting excuse of a bluish white. I will go ahead and make it seem probably worse, and you're probably questioning, why am I doing this? This is the backwards yet the most efficient way to get out of your scale of eyes. So from this color of blue, it doesn't have to be the exact, but if you can get close to this, you've got yourself right. You only need one multiple layer, because all you're going to do really is this. It can be as dirty as you want or as clean, so long as I know and you know that this is blurred. You don't even have to lower it, just smack it in there. For screen, however, you're going to gently raise it a little closer to the white. Come in like this. Still has that bluish to it, but it looks almost odd. You're gonna get a bigger brush and try to get this white as close as you can to the top. It's never gonna reach the top, but if you can get as close, you're good. So now we have this odd looking eyeball that still doesn't look like it should. That's okay, because we're gonna add a luminosity. And now you can go full white and get ready for the most beautiful eye you've ever seen, because I love doing this. Look at that. Looks almost natural now. It's usually the fun way of doing this. Now you don't have to merge this. I just like doing this first, because it's time for the final step. Yep. Like usual, my thing wigs the crap out of it. Alright, since this is the last one, I'll get us some more happier music. Alright, so the final step. Doing eyes. Her eyes are really light blue. That's okay, we're gonna mess with the scale of blue right now. So, go a little bit darker, and we'll worry about this main one to show, and the other one is up to you. Again, you can pause whenever you need to. So this is usually the first layer. Almost about towards the half marker here of multiple. Do another multiple. And do one more for good luck. It gives that kind of depth feel. Now, we're never done when it comes to these multiple layers. I just get the first part out of the way. So what you want to do, put almost a pupil for each one. So that's one pupil. 2 pupils. 3. Doesn't have to be perfect, but this is usually how it ends up. So you can do these individually, or the way I usually do, all together. Going all together again. So, get as small as a brush as you can. Bring this top layer down to bring it down here. You're good there. Circle. Same thing, bring it down. Bring all this down. And when you do that, it gives this sort of darkish tint to it. I'll do it over here too. So 1. Except this time, I'll do it the way I usually do it. There's 1. Two. And 3. Again, a little bit smaller, but you come in and bring it down. Alright, so now that we have our 2 eyeballs here all ready and set to go, you want to make sure you have enough space in here to work, so usually I'll do this. Do a very light around this, so I know that it's not going to consume any more space. Go to screen, in this white void here now, you're going to go ahead and take that same color. It's not going to look like a lot, but trust me, it makes much of a difference. Just going to lightly brush in this half here. Now we have sort of this afterglowish effect to it. I'm going to lower that a bit. You can merge these layers now. It's okay. If you still need that reference, then what you can do is go up to the side, have your reference here. But now that we have this part, we're going to go ahead and mess with this a little bit more. So go all the way down as close as you can to black. You're going to go ahead and hit multiple. You're going to go ahead and hit here, and make sure it's connected to the right layer, and lightly mark out where your black outline would be. It's going to look funny, but as you can see, it overlaps everything, and it adds that tint. Now, obviously with her eyes, I can't go any farther or else I will extenuate too much of her eye. But go as far as you need for your style. You don't even need to mess with this. Just leave it be. It'll save you in the long run. So we'll take our reference again. Go ahead and hit screen. A little bit lighter. And just grab a big circle. Like so. This circle is going to be your friend for a bit. This circle here needs to be lowered down. Doesn't have to be a lot, but enough to where I can still see the pupil, but it gives a tint. So now, we use this same one to go in for some extra detail. Something I usually do that most people don't have to, but do 1, 2, and it gives that illusion to almost a realistic eye. Some people could probably say it looks anime, but actually most of our eyes have almost a reflective light in them. You don't have to really mess with this. I usually just keep it pretty bright but a little bit low. Since there's a lot of blue we're playing off of, I'll go ahead and add the two other things that I normally add that you don't have to, which is a circle and a line. So go back to luminosity. We're going to do a small circle right at the bottom. This circle is going to be very low but not a lot. Lastly, Mr. Circle gets a friend, Mr. Line. And the line just sharp line across. Lower this, not a lot, but enough to where we can still see the line. Alright, so we have everything this eye truly needs for it. So just add a nice little white hue wherever, again, your sun is pointed. Mine is over here, so her pupils are going to be here and here. Doesn't matter if it runs out because we can just do this and it's gone. But oh wait, that doesn't really look too natural. That circle got in the way. That circle looks too bold. Not to worry, because now we just take our good old friend the reference, get rid of Mr. Reference, and change the luminosity. One more ought to do this, so let's go almost as bright as we can with this color. That looks good. Gives that really haze look. Now let's lower this bad boy to about, I'd say here. I can still see everything, but now the circle blends in. It no longer looks like a white circle, it looks like a really light blue circle matching with the eye. So if we now blend everything together, add a Swifty background if you haven't, and I do this, well, by golly gee, that's the brightest eyes I've ever seen. And this is usually how I go about things. Now, I'm not going to say this because obviously we do any more tutorials. I want it to be something different every time we do this together. But I hope you've learned a lot throughout this small, probably an hour session. Sure, we had a few smaller buffs since I did go along with you guys, but it makes things a little bit easier. And it sounds a little bit more natural than to those I usually edit, though I'm not discrediting that. But again, if you need other tutorials, say like tears, how to do flames, I'll be more than happy to sit back down and do one of these again with you guys. Until then, this is Hero Fast signing out on this video of tutorials on how I SAI. I'll see you guys in the next video.